Katie, let's just start with the names outside big tech. The brand names that people gravitated to in the pandemic, in the lockdown, are they still the names, the places to be, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I can just take one step back and say something kind of about equity markets generally, and then we can, and I'd love to talk a little bit about where we're looking beyond big tech. So very big picture. It's funny. I was just in our morning meeting this morning. I was just saying to our team, every year around this time, people come to us and they prognosticate that markets next year are going to be up around the mid to high single digits. And that is never true. Most of the time, as you know, markets overshoot or undershoot by a few standard deviations. This may be the year that we actually end up in the mid to high single digits, but the path of how we got here is obviously has been nothing but linear. So we had this 35% drawdown. We've had a 60% recovery to the top. The median stock in the S&P doesn't get noticed a lot, but it's still 20% below its high. We've got growth linked to a lot of the comments you guys were just making, up 25%, value still down 10%, and the FANGs, of course, up 43%. The other 495 stocks in the S&P actually down on the year. So a lot of things happening underneath here. We do think the volatility will persist. And to build on some of your comments, we're actually really focused, as you know, on finding great businesses that are in the themes that are going to kind of outperform over the next decade. And when we think about those three areas I'd love to go into would be tech-enabled consumption, what's happening with climate, big news out of China yesterday on that front, and then where we're looking beyond the FANGs. So if it's okay with you, John, maybe we'll pick up on the consumer a little bit and talk about Nike. Does that work?
Katie, you can run the interview. We've been close for a number of years. By all means, you go wherever you want to go. Katie, you start.
Okay, so on Nike, they obviously sell sports apparel. The yoga, the Nike Air Max. As someone who's expecting my fourth kid, I'm a big consumer of both of those products right now. And yes, of course, it's a consumer story, but the big picture here is around tech-enabled consumption. And this is a theme that we've liked, as you know, for a long time. Millennials driving it. They want things more conveniently and drive the cost down. And Nike's really played at the center of that. So you can think about it as a consumer stock, but we would actually argue it's really more of a tech story. They have moved. The big number I'd focus on that came out last night is they have moved from 20% of global sales online to 30%. So really firmly moving from wholesale to retail and most importantly, digital retail. And they're the other part of the tech ecosystem for them that's working, of course, is the Nike Fit app. So you mentioned John Donahoe. I just want to emphasize, great leader. And this is a great example of how culture and leadership can help a company navigate during a pandemic and really come out the other side stronger. And I do believe strong getting stronger if they have the right leaders is the theme we're focused on. Other quick thing I'll end with on consumer. We've also, as you know, just to own up to it, we have like travel-related stocks because millennials have a preference for experience over things. We need to risk manage those positions at the outset of the pandemic, but we still believe those are going to perform over the long term. You guys made a couple of comments around travel. I build on that to say that if you look at data outside the U.S., let's take China. We're coming up on Golden Week. Bookings for Golden Week in China, which is domestic China travel, are actually where they were year over year, but before the pandemic. So they've normalized. 60% of those bookings happening from folks that are millennial aged. And so we do think eventually the travel space will normalize, and we do hold on to those positions in the consumer space.
Katie, are you finding more of these opportunities outside of the United States?
Yeah, I think going back to the tech in particular, and let's just talk about the FANGs. I mean, people get disappointed in it in a couple of weeks where we haven't had great performance, but these companies have obviously done a phenomenal job really over the last decade. And as I said, year to date up over 43%. We still own some of them, but I think people need to, be aware that they are running into some thresholds for growth. They're actually saturated in some markets. They're obviously facing some regulatory scrutiny. And so to your comment about outside the U.S., tech's a great sector, particularly on the back of the splinter net issues, which we could go into, where one needs to hunt down the market cap to find the future growth opportunities and also hunt outside the U.S. I agree with Mark Zuckerberg's congressional testimony where he pointed out that this ecosystem does change over time. And it's highly likely at the end of this decade, we're going to have different big tech leaders. And if you want to own them, you need to be looking outside the U.S. and down the market cap.
It just feels like it's getting more nationalistic in tone, Katie, if that's even the right word to use. It seems that the regulatory issue is one issue, and that it seems to be China versus the United States, a lot of patriotism kicking in as well. How do you navigate those choppy waters going through the next couple of years?
Yeah, so you know, on the other hand, it's actually the one thing all parties agree with in the U.S. is that there's going to be a continued tension with China. So how we think about that as investors is obviously we're investing in capturing the best of the tech ecosystem, cloud, payments, e-commerce in the U.S. But then we have to be really thoughtful about getting our clients exposure to that in China as perhaps those stacks actually continue to separate. And so we are trying to own some of those local winners in China. And I think that's going to continue to be a really important thing for investors to focus on when they think about their tech exposure. They, again, got to be looking outside the U.S. and of course, also down the market cap to capture those.